There we go. Welcome, everyone. Season end live stream. Houston Astros season is over earlier than anyone could have expected, given what we've seen the past 10 years. So I will be taking questions, hopefully having some answers as the Astros go into their final preparations to get ready for what will be going on throughout the offseason this year, between for the first time in 10 years that they have not been able to make the postseason. So obviously lots of changes going to be made to the team, handful of free agents, what those guys are going to look like with the rotation, how much change will there be in terms of the lineup, where you now have a ton of guys that play similar positions. Yordan Alvarez is going to have to DH much of the time. Jose Altuve is probably going to have to DH sometime and probably likely play a decent amount of left field. You're going to have two third basemen, essentially, to where you're going to need to move Isaac Paredes to a different position because Carlos Correa is there to be your third baseman. Jeremy Pena is there to be your shortstop. I wouldn't say that that's necessarily guaranteed. There is a chance that the Astros could sell high on a trade with Pena. I think it's less likely that they try to sell medium to medium high on a trade with Paredes, especially with how much Dana Brown really, really wanted him and made sure that he went and got him in the Kyle Tucker trade. And then you have, of course, at first base right now, Christian Walker, who, if you do trade him, you are going to be selling low on Christian Walker. I know there's a lot of people that don't want to keep Christian Walker, but right now, if you get rid of him, you are trading him at the lowest value. There's a chance maybe you have to kick in money depending on who you're trading him to. But the Astros are not the only team that are going to be active in trades. There's been plenty of reports out of St. Louis that some of the guys on the Cardinals that did not want to get traded, that had no trade clauses, that those guys are willing to get traded, like Nolan Arenado, who shut down a trade to Houston, or Sonny Gray, who was a pitcher that the Astros, among many other teams, I think would be open to getting dealt because the Cardinals are not going in a direction that those guys believed they were going to go when they first signed with those teams, the same way that Carlos Correa believed that the Twins were going to be a good team long term, and they had to tear it down to the studs this trade deadline. And now he's back with the Astros, hoping that the team that he grew up with is going to be a team that is going to have sustained winning. So the biggest thing, and we're going to start with the injuries and going through the tweet that I had the other day, where, I mean, you go through the list and there's like guys I forgot because they're either no longer on the Astros or their tenure was so brief that I don't necessarily remember. So from pitchers, Spencer Arrighetti, Ronel Blanco, Luis Garcia, Josh Hader, Lance McCullers Jr., Caleb Ort, John Rooney, Bennett Souza, Brandon Walter, Hayden Wesneski, and if you add guys who are no longer on the team, that's Sean Dubin and that's Forrest Whitley. That's just pitchers. That's a long list. And then we get to position players, and you got Isaac Paredes missing 2 months. Jeremy Pena missed 35 games. Brendan Rodgers missed 3.5 months. Yordan Alvarez missed 100 games. Zach DeZenzo missed 4 months. Chas McCormick missed the final 6 weeks and then missed some time. Jacob Melton missed 6 weeks, and then early in the season had some back stuff. Jake Myers missed 2 months. Taylor Trammell missed 4 months. Not even adding in Luis Guillorme, who helped them for a little bit and then eventually got put on the IL and DFA'd and all that stuff. So at one point, you have 18 guys on the injured list. You have something like 30 guys that at some point during different parts of the season hit the IL. I didn't even mention Victor Caratini had the concussion IL at a bad time. You're missing Jeremy Pena at the end of the year with the oblique at a bad time. You're missing, obviously, Yordan Alvarez with the ankle after he fought for months to get back from his hand injury at a bad time, and just all of that combined with the offensive output that they had and the offensive approach, where these guys are just not seeing pitches and they're not walking, and it's such a different lineup build than when you had, the 2019 team, which was obviously one of the better offensive teams probably ever, and the 2021 team, which was an offensive juggernaut until they got shut down in the World Series by the Atlanta Braves. You didn't see that kind of offensive output with the Astros this year. No 30 home run hitters. And you had guys in your lineup. Obviously, Jordan missed 100 games. So how are you going to have a 30 home run hitter from Jordan when he played 48 games? Jose Altuve hit 26. If you're relying, he's had 30 before. If you're relying on Jose Altuve to be your 30 home run hitter, it's not an ideal setup in the lineup. Isaac Paredes would have done it, but he was hurt for 2 months. Christian Walker did not have the kind of season that the Astros were envisioning from Christian Walker and had to make some swing changes midway through the year to even get to a point where he had a decent second half. And I don't want to compare Christian Walker to Jose Abreu, but it felt, a little bit like Abreu's first year. Obviously, Walker is a significantly better defensive player, but Jose Abreu was horrendous his first half of the season and then turned it on and had a nice second half of the season. And then obviously totally fell apart in 2024. It was, again, not making the comparison, but Christian Walker, really bad first half of the season, turned it around for the most part, good second half of the season. But there's a lot of things that Christian Walker did in the middle of that lineup that were not helpful. A lot of strikeouts with runners on base, a lot of strikeouts with runners in scoring position. And he was just not as good of a player as he was with the Diamondbacks. And you have him for 2 more years and 20 more million. So he's one of those contracts where you're going to need to take a look at and figure out, can we get rid of him and get something back, even though he's at his lowest value? Or do we believe that the good second half, the underlying numbers, the leadership, all of that is going to be worth it to have Christian Walker for the next 2 years? Lance McCullers Jr. is another pitcher that missed, 4 injured list stints this year, finally came back after 2 years off and was just not the same guy. He showed flashes here and there, was clearly just not the guy, right? And you have him for 1 more year, making $17 million, and he has 0 trade value. You're going to get nothing back for him. So either you run it back, you give him a shot out of spring training, and then if it doesn't work, and hopefully it's the opposite and it does work and you get some value out of him, but if it doesn't work, you are going to have to outright release, DFA, all that with Lance McCullers, to knowing that there just isn't a spot for him. Could the start that we saw him give today with the 3 innings be his last start in a Houston uniform? It's certainly possible. He's going to have to win a spot out of spring training, because even though he's making $17 million, he's going to have all the runway in the world. Doesn't mean it's guaranteed. So let's start with the pitching staff and what we could see next season. Framber Valdez will not be back. Whatever offer they make to him this offseason is not going to be a realistic enough offer to keep him. The target for Valdez is the Max Fried contract, 8 years, $218 million or something thereabouts. I think he's going to have a hard time getting that deal, although I do think that many fans who have been upset with Framber Valdez over the past couple of months will be surprised at what kind of deal he has the ability to land. I think he's going to be able to land a pretty solid deal. Joel Garcia here, will we make a qualified offer? I would assume so, and I would assume he would turn it down, and then the Astros would get the draft pick. I'm pretty sure that there's nothing with his contract that would mean that they wouldn't make a qualified offer. He's not going to want to stick around for 1 more year. This is going to be a divorce. Let's see. I'm pretty sure he's going to be a guy that you're going to get a draft pick for. It makes all sorts of sense. Yeah, so $22 million qualifying offer. He's going to turn it down. There will be teams that will have multi-year deals for him at more money per year than that, but it would obviously be smart for the Astros to give him the qualifying offer, knowing that they will be able to get a draft pick out of him. So you have Hunter Brown back. There's your number 1 starter, obviously going to be the number 1 starter. You're going to start having to pay him arbitration. So his salary will rise from nearly nothing, league minimum, to something fairly substantial after the year that he just put in, and will have a top 4 finish in the Cy Young. I would think that he should be third behind Garrett Crochet and the eventual Cy Young winner, Tarek Skubal. A lot of lists that I've seen recently put him behind Max Fried. So he's going to have a substantial raise. I think your number 2 starter is Christian Javier. And then after that, it is a muddled mess. Could it be Spencer Arrighetti? Could it be Jason Alexander? And then after that, whatever mix of guys. The tweet that I put out, I think Arrighetti third. I have Alexander fourth. I have AJ Blubaugh winning a 5th spot. And then McCullers, Colton Gordon, JP France after that. So we'll see what happens. You know that Luis Garcia is out. You know that Brandon Walter is out for a substantial amount of time after his Tommy John surgery. And then you just kind of hope that a guy like Ethan Petco or a guy like Miguel Oyola can make some noise in spring training. But right now, that's the guys you have. It is not going to stop the Astros from going after people in free agency, going after guys in trades. Like one of those guys I mentioned earlier, Sonny Gray would be a smart guy to get, especially if he wants out and is ready to be dealt from the Cardinals. There are plenty of pitchers that signed deals a few years ago that if you eat some money, you can get a guy that can stabilize your rotation and not have to rely on, the hope that Jason Alexander is going to continue this despite the fact that he was a waiver claim, or that Spencer Arrighetti is healthy and can pick up on what he did in the back half of last season, or that AJ Blubaugh can pick up what he did this year. And he'll have an innings limit to some degree, obviously. You want to get what you can out of Colton Gordon or JP France, and you hope you get something out of Lance McCullers Jr. So let's take a look at some questions here. How am I? I'm okay. Getting ready to watch Sunday Night Football here in a little bit. Thank you for everybody who says nice things. Which player would I be surprised that the Astros would trade this offseason? I don't think that anyone is fully off the table. I would be very surprised if they trade Jordan or they trade Jeremy Pena, but I wouldn't say that those things are like impossible, right? I would be very surprised if they trade Isaac Paredes, but I don't believe that that's impossible. I would be far less surprised if they trade Christian Walker, knowing that he is going to be at his lowest value. I would be less surprised if they trade Yainer Diaz. That being said, there's basically nothing behind Yainer Diaz. You probably should bring back Victor Caratini. We'll see what he gets on the open market after having basically the 2 best seasons of his career in Houston. They really like him here. He's not going to be all that expensive. It makes sense on every level. That being said, you have a bunch of high talent guys, and the core should be kept intact, right? Like there's one move you can make, and because you have a lot of guys redundant at positions, right? Like Jordan's the DH. Left field is probably Jose Altuve. You need to find some sort of second baseman. Otherwise, you're going to put Jose Altuve at second base, or you're going to be putting Isaac Paredes at second base, and you're going to have below average defense from Paredes at second base, knowing you're going to have above average defense, Gold Glover at first base in Christian Walker, and a Gold Glove level third baseman in Carlos Correa, and a Gold Glove level shortstop in Jeremy Pena. So knowing that that's what you're going to do, that means that Jose Altuve needs to play left. That means that Yordan Alvarez needs to DH. That could put Jesus Sanchez's roster spot in danger. Is he a guy that you can find some trade value in? Is he a non-tender candidate, knowing that he could make more than $4.5 million? He was making $4.5 million last year. Oh, by the way, his agent is Scott Boras, who's not going to try to take any L's in arbitration to make a point because he is Scott Boras. And so you're going to have to come up in a situation where you believe that Jesus Sanchez is going to give you $5 million plus worth of value, or you find some sort of trade for him, or you just non-tender him to save the money. What would I prioritize this offseason? It's a good question. There are changes they can make with what they have. I would obviously prioritize figuring out why everyone is hurt all the time and why it takes forever to everyone to get back and why the injuries are not healing and all that kind of stuff. I think that the medical staff is obviously target number one on figuring out what happens. Secondly, the hitting coaches, I don't think that they have as much, cachet as you think they do. And it's to some degree, it's on the players to get stuff done. But that is something that Dana Brown and Jim Crane will be looking at. And is whatever process is that they're using going to be positive moving forward? And even if you don't necessarily believe that it's their fault, sometimes you never know that a different voice could be good to hold these guys to the fire and not have the kind of slumps or the kind of 1, 2, 3 run efforts, or the kind of performance that we saw the last couple of months of the year, despite the fact that there were all these injuries, which is where I would put priority number one. My thoughts on Espada is the next question. I think he's fine. If you can get someone better, I guess. That being said, like, who is such a markedly better manager that you can get? And don't say AJ Hinch, because he nearly collapsed the Tigers out of the playoffs, right? Like, I know there's a lot of love for AJ Hinch. I don't think that he is a legitimate option for the Astros. I think that the fact that he got the Tigers into the playoffs would mean that he probably signs an extension there. And they're a rising team. They just beat the Astros in the playoffs. They are in the playoffs and the Astros are not. They have shown some sort of financial wherewithal to go after guys like Alex Bregman and to sign and trade for different players to where they are spending some money. And from what I've heard behind the scenes from different people associated with that organization, they love him and he has quite a bit of power. And so why would he want to come back to Houston knowing that he's got a GM above him that could be Dana Brown, likely Dana Brown, right? He's got an owner that is very involved in a lot of day-to-day stuff, or very involved in trade stuff, or very involved in free agency stuff, knowing that in Detroit, AJ Hinch has, from what I've been told by multiple people that know people within that organization, he's got a lot of power and they love him. And they're young and they're upcoming, and you have the Cy Young winner, the back-to-back Cy Young winner. You have some young pitching. Casey Mize is good. You have some young hitting that has turned the corner. They got, that lineup is Kerry Carpenter and Riley Green, and Torkelson finally became a player. And whatever use you can get out of Hayes, shortstop, former Cub, who was on the Mets, whatever use you can get out of him, they put him in center field. Name is blanking me. Javier Baez, like whatever you can get out of Baez. And they have some bullpen guys that are coming up, and a lot of pitchers that were hurt that they didn't get to use this year, right? So in some ways, Detroit could be a better situation for him than the Astros right now. From Mario, can they trade Walker and move Paredes to first? Yes. That being said, that means you have to go get a second baseman, or you are putting Jose Altuve at second, because there just isn't a whole lot of options. You need to trade for a second baseman, or you don't want to give Ramon Urias or Mauricio Dubon that spot for good, right? Like, it just isn't. That's just not the spot that you want those guys as utility guys. There's not 100% chance they're here. They're useful. There's a chance Mauricio Dubon wins another Gold Glove, and he could be to some degree trade bait. And Ramon Urias could be to some degree trade bait, because they're sort of redundant players. There could be a lot of guys on sort of the back end of the offense that could move. Jesus Sanchez is a guy. Chas McCormick I could see as a non-tender candidate. If any team wants to trade for him, I could see him as a trade candidate. Good question here from Ross. Do you expect any extensions like Cole or Cam Smith? No. Cole hasn't done enough to earn an extension. Cam Smith, I could see them approaching Excel about it, and he just, hit the rookie wall in the back half, and I could see you don't necessarily want to sign the extension at your lowest value if you're Cam Smith, knowing that there's more in there, and he's got 5 more years. What does that extension look like? Like, knowing the kind of offers that they gave to Hunter Brown and Jeremy Pena, which I'm not going to, tell you the initial offers, but it's not something that Cam Smith would probably go for, or would make sense for a guy that's only going to be 26, 27 at free agency. You could probably get a massive deal if he turns out to be the all-star type player that everybody believes that he's going to be. So that doesn't make sense. The extension to me that makes the most sense for the Astros is Isaac Paredes. That's like the one guy I would look at, or like Arrighetti. And again, he would probably be taking a lower market value than he is worth. John, good question here. Who should they try to retain in the bullpen? Obviously, you're going to bring back Josh Hader. You are going to bring back Abreu. You're going to bring back Brian King. And then after that, it's kind of a crapshoot, right? Like, let me look at their 40 and see who else they have. I think Ort is just sort of on a year-to-year basis. A lot of the good thing about these bullpen guys is a lot of them are cheap, and it's just you bring them back at minimum salary and whatever you get out of them. Like Dubin's a great example of this, right? Like you bring him back at minimum salary. He was really good in the first half of the year. He got hurt. He came back. He wasn't good. You DFA him. Like that could be about half the bullpen right now. So I'm looking at who they have. Like Okert was on a 1-year deal, but I think that he's ARB 3 next year. So keep Okert around for a couple $1 million. Why not? Bennett Souza, I believe, is going into his arbitration 1 year. Souza was really good this year until he got hurt. I would keep Bennett Souza. Like you're also paying these guys like $1-2 million, right? Why not keep those guys? And then you're going to basically have a fully stocked bullpen. Hader's back, Abreu's back, King is back on pre-arbitration. Okert is probably a decision just because he's in the arbitration 3 year, but he had a nice year. Like, why not? Souza, probably, I would give him ARB1 money pretty easily. Kimbrel is going to be a free agent. I would assume he's not back. Angel De Los Santos is ARB3. You could probably get rid of De Los Santos. John Rooney, I expect to be healthy for spring training 2026, given the reporting that I had on his injury, which was a tennis elbow and a cleanup of bone spurs. Dubin's gone. Nick Hernandez just got DFA'd. Luis Contreras. I mean, you have like 5 or 6 guys that you're locked in, and then you can just figure out the back end too and just get whoever off the scrap heap. So the bullpen doesn't necessarily worry me because if everyone's healthy, the year that Souza and Brian King had was really good. It's just like when Brian King's your 8th inning guy, you're starting to get in trouble. But having your 9th inning guy be obviously all-star closer Josh Hader and your 8th inning guy be Brian Abreu, who's been one of the best 8th inning guys the past 4 or 5 years in Major League Baseball, like then you're good, and then you can figure it out from then on. So I'm not all that worried about the bullpen, given that you have a full season of Hader and you have a full season of Abreu, because seeing that, it shows that those are the guys that you want. Those are the guys that are going to be effective. And then once you have to slot everyone up, then that's where you start to worry. That being said, I think they need to add to the starting pitching because, like, I'm looking at a starting rotation right now where it's Arrighetti 3, Jason Alexander 4, AJ Blueball maybe 5. John, how many starters do you need to get? 2. I think you need to get one relatively high-end starter and then a lower end, like a innings eater, whatever type of guy. So like if I look at free agent starters 2026, Justin Verlander to some degree makes sense if he could stay healthy. And obviously you love him if you're the Astros, organization, and Jim Crane loves him. Let's see. There's a lot of guys here. Chris Bassett could be available. Miles Michaelis is a free agent. Verlander's right there. Zach Gallen, I think, is going to be priced out a bit. Dylan Cease, I think, would be tried to trade for him anyway. Like Dylan Cease, to me, should be your high-end guy. Then you try to fix whatever it is he needs fixing. Tyler Anderson, probably not. Ranger Suarez is going to be too expensive. Herman Marquez could be a nice, that could be your lower end guy where he pitched in Colorado forever. And it's the worst organization in all of baseball. And they did everything they can to screw up everybody. And then you can figure out what you can do with them. Merrill Kelly could be a guy you can look at. Other than that, it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of sexy names out there. Adrian Hauser, Dustin May. It's not a lot, right? So I would probably, if I'm looking at that list and I'm looking at what are realistic deals for the Houston Astros, I would prioritize Dylan Cease and then Herman Marquez as your back end. You hope that he stays healthy and gives you some innings because he think he came off injury this year and then pitched. I mean, he was 3-16 with a 6.70 ERA this year. I think a lot of that is a function of the fact that he played for the frickin' Rockies and they were just garbage. And their whole process is garbage and everything about them is garbage. And so if you get him, he's only 30, you get him to a team that actually knows what they're doing. Made 26 starts through 126 innings. He's been hurt the past couple of years. At one point, though, you could probably get him on a reclamation project for like $1 million, like 1 year, 1 point, whatever, right? Like something. Good question. How are you feeling as a Mets fan? Very disappointed. $340 million roster, supposedly Wonder Boy GM, and Juan Soto having an MVP level second half, and you're going to have Pete Alonso and Francisco Lindor probably receive down ballot MVP votes. You have this very talented lineup, and you can't even make the playoffs, and you choke at the end because the way that they built their pitching staff was beyond unacceptable. Thinking that you're not going to have a true ace and that, Clay Holmes and Minaya and Frankie Montas, and the way that I look at it next year for them, go get Framber Valdez. Like, he's going to give you innings. He's going to give you innings. You can't necessarily rely on innings from Kodai Senga. You definitely can't rely on innings from Montas. David Peterson to me is like a 4 or 5. Sean Minaya is whatever. I don't know. The Mets have a lot of work to do, and the good thing for them is they have unlimited money to spend. Here's a good question. Urias, Dubon, Sanchez seem to be repetitive, create log jams the roster. Do you see one or multiple being traded? I would say out of those three, I would put Sanchez as most likely to be traded or non-tendered. He's making $4.5 million this year. That's not an insignificant amount of money for a player who was really bad for the Astros. There are teams that have traded for guys that just straight up gave up on him, just DFA'd and whatever, right? And I think that had the Astros been out of it earlier, or had they gotten to a point where they absolutely need the roster spot, I'm not sure that his roster spot would have been 100% safe. So I think that out of those three guys that you mentioned, Jesus Sanchez is the most likely to be moved or non-tendered or whatever. Urias and Dubon are sort of repetitive. I think Dubon has more value in a trade than Urias does. I mean, they got him for Twine Palmer, who is just a pitcher that the Astros drafted that you'll never hear about until he, hopefully for him, right? Like, I'm always cheering for these guys that make pro ball to make the big leagues. But it's not like he was one of their top prospects. Like, he's a guy in the system. Dubon might win a Gold Glove this year, probably going to be a Gold Glove finalist, has some value, very important in the clubhouse, like leadership role within the clubhouse. I think that he's the least likely of those three to be moved. So unless we got some last minute questions here, Sunday Night Football is about to get started, and I'm going to have a relaxing Sunday night. I hope you all are as well. Is Dana safe as GM? It's a good question. Wouldn't say 100% safe, but I would say likely, like probably, yeah. I don't know how much of the collapse is his fault, right? Like in terms of his moves, other than Christian Walker. In terms of his moves, other than Christian Walker, like what Dana moves are really his fault. You know what I mean? Cam Smith hit a rookie wall. Lance McCullers Jr. is not his extension. Like, there's just not a whole lot that, and on the other hand, Victor Caratini is a Dana signing. How much of Dana involvement, how much Crane involvement was Carlos Correa, right? And then there's some other guys that you can tell are Dana guys, like Isaac Paredes, the guy he loves in the Crawford boxes. So, like, you look at the mistakes and the bad things that happen. Sanchez is a Dana move, yeah. But again, like, you gave up what, and I understand the trade, like with Sanchez, like I get it. It didn't work. And I don't think you fire Dana Brown over Jesus Sanchez because you traded away Ryan Gusto, who's a back end swingman kind of type, and a couple other, minor leaguers. Like, yeah, Sanchez was terrible. and they're probably going to do something about it in terms of a trade or a non-tender. I don't think that you fire a GM over that trade. Like, that's not. Sanchez is meant to be a complementary piece because the team was too right-handed and then he turned out to not be good. Like, that happens. Not everyone nails all the trades. And I'm not necessarily just like defending Dana, like it was a bad trade and it didn't work, but I understand the process of why you did that trade. Like, and the result was bad, and I get it, and and it happens. It's just like, you don't fire a GM over missing on a complimentary trade, right? Just like, I'm upset with the Mets the way that they didn't make the playoffs and the Ryan Helsley trade was horrible. The result was, at least, but like, you don't fire David Stearns because he missed on a reliever. Like, if Correa came in and looked like he was broken down and whatever, and then you start having questions, but like, Correa came in and was great. And obviously there was, Jim Crane had something to do with that, given the prior relationship with Correa. But you don't fire a GM over a complimentary trade like that. So everybody enjoy their Sunday night. Thanks for joining me. Maybe we do this later in the week. The Astros should be talking at some point this week with Dana and Joe Espada, and we will be able to react to that, and we'll see what happens. Thank you, everybody, for watching and all the support.